Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this Just Share event here at St Mary Le Bow. It's great to see so many of you here for a rather different event for us. I hope you're looking forward to buying some Afghan action carpets and some of Canon Andrew White's books afterwards tonight. A few notices before we begin. For those of you who don't know Just Share, we're a charity based here in this church which tries to engage with the city by running debates and lectures on ethical economics issues. So things like fair trade, ethical investment, tax justice, climate change, and tonight, reconciliation. If you haven't heard about us before, please do sign up to join our mailing list, which you'll find at the back of the church, and do pick up one of our programmes so you can find out about our events next year, looking like that. Now, it's my very great pleasure to welcome our speakers tonight. First, we have Canon Andrew White, who is often known as the Vicar of Baghdad. He began his working life as a medic and also worked as a politician, and now combines the three roles of medic, politician and Anglican priest in his work in Iraq, where he's vicar of St George's Church, which also has a clinic, and he's been involved in some very high-level negotiation work, which he'll tell you more about later on. And then we have Zainab Homam, who is a lady from Afghanistan, who's studying in the UK and also spends a lot of time working with UK and Afghani NGOs, promoting peace and development. And then on the far left, Isar, who is a PhD student specialising in state building in post-conflict areas, particularly the role of development aid in reconstructing states, and he also has experience of the reconciliation and negotiation processes. Quick word about the format. Canon White will begin with about 15 minutes on his experiences, and then Zainab and Isar will talk for about 5 and 10 minutes each, and that should leave us 20 minutes for your questions, and then plenty of time afterwards for you to buy these wonderful Afghan action carpets and Andrew's books, and also join us for some fair trade refreshments. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's very nice to be here with you. I think you must be all slightly strange to come out on such a cold night as this. I'm pleased I'm going back to Baghdad. At least it will be slightly warmer there. Having been here for 3 days, I feel ready to go back now. Now, the subject this evening is very important because reconciliation is at the heart of everything that the Bible stands for, and it's at the heart of what we're trying to do politically, and it's a challenge. In Arabic, the word is masalaha. We were just having a little debate just now that Iraq, do you know what, we actually beat Afghanistan in something. We became the most corrupt nation in the world, more corrupt than them. Iraq and Afghanistan, sadly, have in common complete corruption. And this corruption is particularly seen politically. And so we have to work very hard at trying to dismount the raging corruption in our nation. So, what do I do in Iraq? I have the biggest church in Iraq, and it's far better being a vicar in Baghdad than London. I loved being in London, in Clapham, but Baghdad is even better. It's warmer, not very nice food, but a lot of challenging things. So I run the church, and the church includes a wonderful school, and it includes a clinic as well. And it's quite good having a medical background because it means I can at least understand things and direct this clinic. And there's a calendar here, which I know it's a bit strange having a picture of a dentist in a church, but we do, and a school. So we can do most things. It's amazing, really. But one of the other things, apart from running all these services, is running the reconciliation work. And it's a real challenge running the reconciliation work in a nation which is corrupt and which is divided and in which religious sectarianism is very key. Now, religious sectarianism. It was Archbishop William Temple who said that when religion goes wrong, it goes very wrong. And I don't like religion very much. It's so dangerous. Because we have seen how religion has caused more than violence. I think of the biggest tension that we have between Shia and Sunni. It is, oh dear, my beads are breaking. They always break every day. In the Arab world, men play with beads all the time, but they're broken. So I'll put them in my pocket. Anyway, but the Shia, people often say, well, what's the difference? Shia followed Imam Ali, who was the son-in-law and nephew and cousin of Muhammad. So their leadership is very much traditional and passed down in the family. The Sunni followed 12 caliphs, so they're a lot less based around individuals who are hereditary in control. And so Shia in Iraq are about 70% of people are Shia. 30% are Sunni. The Sunni are responsible for most of the violence. The grand imam of the Sunni community, Sheikh Khalid Mullah, was actually in my house in England yesterday. Usually we're together in Baghdad. And he says to me quite clearly, he says that 80% of all the violence in Iraq is caused by the Sunni. And it's particularly caused by the Sunni who come into Iraq from outside. Saudi Arabia is the biggest risky place. The Salafi and Wahhabi extremist groups. And these are the groups which produce Al-Qaeda. And we call it AQI, Al-Qaeda Iraq. They are very significant as regards the violence that we face. Now, regularly, in our church, we bring together Sunni, Shia, and Masihi Christians. And the relationship is incredible. And it's a relationship which is really based on love. People often say to me, how do we form relationships with Muslims? I say, be nice to them, love them, and give them food. Food is really key. You've heard of the term, when we meet, we eat. Well, that's what we do. But we eat and eat and eat. But that is one way practically showing you care about the other. And in our calendar, you will see a picture of the Sunni sheikhs with the Christians and all the Shia sheikhs, all the Shia ayatollahs from Najaf. And it's incredible how we work together. But one of the key things is that we have to learn about each other. The American poet Richard Longfellow. Who likes Longfellow? Nobody? Oh, one person. Good. Who's heard of Longfellow? Oh, good. That makes me feel better. And when Longfellow said, "Who is my enemy?" It is the person whose story I have not heard. And I can remember soon after the 203 war, when we started the reconciliation work, one of the early things I was doing was bringing the religious leaders together. And I thought we will spend our first day just listening to each other's stories. Well, first day they weren't finished. Second day they weren't finished. Third day they weren't finished. A few months later we met. They still weren't finished at the end of that. End of the year, still weren't finished. It took over 2 years just to hear the stories of the other. And when they had heard each other's stories, they suddenly realized that they had all experienced great pain. One of the key things in terrorism, and we must remember this, so much of terrorism is about loss. As we look at those who are involved in terrorist activity, as we look at it through the years, all of them feel they have lost. They have lost a great deal. They have lost money, in our case through de-Baathification. They have lost property. They have lost businesses. But ultimately, they have lost power. And so often, we fail to realize that power is ultimately about influence. Power is often political. If you look at Iraq, the Saddam regime, the Sunni were the minority, but they had total power. Saddam was a Sunni, and he gave them complete authority. Now the Shia are the majority, and the Sunni have very, very little political influence. And so one of the things we have to do, if you're looking at reconciliation, you have to see what can you give the other back that they feel they have lost. And what you can often give back is influence. Once again, it comes back to power. You have to know the political leaders as well as the religious leaders and the people who have total authority. And they are often the people who you can take the other side to and allow to experience an increased gain of power and influence. And so in our church, one of the things we have learned is that we are very involved in reconciliation work even there. How? By giving. And that's why I have a major relief program. We give food to everybody every week, not just the Christians, everybody who comes. That is why we have an incredible clinic. We have 4 doctors, 3 dentists, an X-ray unit, a stem cell therapy unit, a laboratory, and the patients say to me, Abuna, Father, this is just like England. I said, it's not. There's nowhere we can go to the pharmacy, the dentists, the doctors, the X-ray unit, and the laboratory all under one roof, is there? So, we're better than you. Bother good that. Being a Thomas's medic and allowing to exist in the middle of Baghdad, what I've always wanted to exist. And so we provide for everybody. 95% of our patients are Islamic. We never take any payment for any of our services. Everything is offered free. And I must confess that our church is not big enough for our congregation. So we have services on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I say to people, please do not come every day. Do you think they listen? No. It's not like England where it's, please come to church once a week. No, they all come. There's nothing else to do. So they come all the time. And 500 plus of my congregation are Islamic. And they're mainly women. And the Mothers' Union, we have a brilliant Mothers' Union. They do everything. Anybody a member of the MU? No, oh, never mind. In England, the Mothers' Union isn't really on the ball. But we have, in our one branch, we have 2,700 members. They run the clinic, run the school, run the feeding relief program, and run all the events for the Muslim women. So we're quite with it. I've probably got shut up now, haven't I? I've finished my time, but I'd be delighted to take questions after my 2 colleagues have spoken. And in the meantime, I will just look at the beautiful carpet which I've just brought.
This one.
This one.
No one is allowed to walk on it.
No.
Can I start?
Next one. Zainab.
Good evening, everyone. As Andrew already introduced my name, I am Zainab from Afghanistan. Left my country at a very young age, as young as 11, and I have lived most of my life here in the UK.
Never mind.
I'm used to it, Andrew. I can't come in Iraq.
Oh.
And studied, worked, as Rachel earlier said, worked with many NGOs, and raised 3 lovely kids. Life has been hard in here, challenging, but I made it, luckily, and as you can see, I'm here, sitting, still alive. The topic for tonight is an interesting one, and it's something that I think not just Afghanistan, but globally, that needs to come globally and affect the countries that are in war. But in this case, Afghanistan. My mom was involved in the reconciliation peace process in Afghanistan, and she attended the first conference back in December 2001, where to reach peace, which was a hope then, and reconciliation in Afghanistan was certain goals that should have been achieved by now. And my interest part in here, being a female myself, is women. And there were a lot of promises made then about involving women in the process and letting them to play that integral role in Afghanistan that was needed. But unfortunately, as we know, many years has passed. Not much improvement is seen. Women are still having difficulties in Afghanistan, difficulties in terms of having access to many offices, centers where they need help in order to develop themselves, in order to reach out for their communities. And as we can see still on the news, on some documentaries throughout the internet, on YouTube, a lot of them by so many journalists from all over the world, mainly in this case France and from England, BBC, and some of the USA sites, we can all see that there are still some videos of abuse of women in Afghanistan. And also in terms of education, it's still the access that should have been given and allowed to women that is still not available. Probably in the city to some extent, but in rural areas there are problems. The second point that I wanted to talk about is that reconciliation is not, it is a personal view throughout the studies and the views of myself and my concerns about my country and any countries in the world, but since I am from Afghanistan, again, as I say, in this case Afghanistan, is that for Afghanistan, in order to have resolved some of the issues and reached that goal of reconciliation, I think that there should have been control on the borders. I watched again a YouTube video which was published by Reuters, and there were clearly mines and weapons that was provided to Taliban in Afghanistan by our neighboring countries. So if there were controls on the neighbors, on the borders, such as they can control their borders, so Afghanistan should have been given that ability to have controlled their borders so that weapons were not smuggled into Afghanistan and used against the innocent civilians. And my last and third part is employment, or shall I say unemployment. Afghanistan is one of the countries that majority of its population consists of young. We have got about 60% of 16 to 24 years old in Afghanistan. And where are they? Have they all got jobs? Unfortunately not. Afghanistan, when the youth, they graduate from high school, only 10% of them end up getting a place, probably less than 10%, into a university. The rest, they are just graduates of high school. Where do they turn up to support their families? They are male, they have to provide. And unfortunately, a lot of them turn up towards crime through aid probably getting from Taliban to go and exploit themselves, or they get just depressed, and that leads to abuse of children and wives at home, and again, bringing an unhealthy environment. And these are my personal views that had they been really taken into consideration when they and have been implemented as were promised by the international aid, by the Afghan government, and they have taken these into account, then probably we would have been a bit close, or we would have done something towards reconciliation and peace process in Afghanistan. These are my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important what you say there about women. It's been a very big issue for us. Women's rights in Iraq have gone down, have been diminished. And employment, the only jobs that our people have is army, police, security. Next one.
Thank you very much. As I was introduced, my name is Isar, and
Means Jesus.
Not really. It's Isar.
Does in the
it ends with R. There's a confusion. Yeah.
This is not Isa.
This is
Isar.
Isar ending with an
Yes.
R, so not ending without R.
So you're not Jesus.
I am
He's
not.
not Jesus. He's a follower of Jesus.
It's a pleasure to be here, and as Zainab mentioned, so she has been young enough when she came in here, but I was here when I was not young as Zainab was. So I've just moved into London. I came in 2009 as part of my studies. So I studied political economy of development. And prior to that, I was working with a central bank. So very much I'm a monetary economist, but lately I have moved my studies into some political aspect of development. So now I'm doing a PhD, like Rachel said, in political economy of development with SOAS, and I'm studying the role of tax in building states and aids in these things. Coming to the point, reconciliation and Taliban, that is a very, very challenging topic, and if you expect that I will cover all the problems and all the issues within 10 minutes, I think that is impossible. And but I would like to cover three key areas: the political aspect of it, the economic aspect of it, and if time allows, hopefully on the theological aspect of it. I would start with Stephen John's good definition of spoilers in post-conflict eras, and he defines spoilers into three characteristics. He refers to limited spoilers, total spoiler, and then the greedy spoiler. By limited spoiler, he refers to some of those spoilers who have got their minimum objectives, and they have got flexible objectives, and if the state or whom they are opposing can get socialized, can get integrated, what they require from the government, so they can be part of the government or they can come into the peace process. Whereas the greedy ones, according to Stephen John, is those spoilers who have got their economic desires. So they very much focus on their economic interest, no matter which side they can go to. It could be either the opposition or it could be the government. And the third one, which is the most dangerous one, is the total spoiler. Total spoiler, according to John, is basically those spoilers whose ideology, whose desires, whose interests are quite often inflexible, not changeable. So, and quite often they would not be easily dealt with or could come in the peace process. According to John, he says that it's very hard to come up with a third one because the first two are easy. You can give them what they want. But the third one is really hard because they are not changing their position, they are not changing their ideology, and what they often want is basically the whole power, the whole domination, the whole system. So I very much characterize Taliban as the third one. You could characterize the warlord into one of the other two, like greedy ones. But the third one can fall into that one because of what? Because they have got a very, very strong, firm position with no changes. And I'm sure that you guys would agree with me that in the last 10 years, and particularly in the last 3 years of the reconciliation was initiated, they have never, ever changed their position, but rather they have strengthened it, they have made it more horrific and more terrible. John argues that how could you deal with such people? The two one, as I said, is easy to manage, but the third one is a bit hard because he says, first of all, you have to go through diplomatic ways and go and ask them for help, for peace and negotiation. And if not, go and coerce them, kill them, push them. And I very much agree with John, because you cannot beg peace, or you cannot reach to a peace from a very weak positions. And unfortunately, in the last 10 years, and particularly in the last 3 years, ever since the initiative was launched, there was no progress. As Zainab nicely mentioned, there has been no progress. There have been some relative progress, but at least on the peace part of it, there has been no progress has been made. The question you might have come across would be, so can we coerce them? Do we have the ability? Does the state can coerce them? I would say yes, although it's very hard to answer yes, but my understanding is yes. If you are publicly and if you are politically supported, you can push anything to happen. Unfortunately, the government of Afghanistan position in the last 3 years has been very begging positions. They have always pushed reconciliation. We say one-side reconciliation. Every time they asked for peace and negotiation, Taliban responded very deadly and bloodily. If you follow the media, which I think you do, a couple of months ago, there was a very deadly attack. Actually, every day there is an attack. But a few months ago, there was a very deadly attack. And it was at a time when the transition of security was transferred from some provinces of Afghanistan. Transition was given from international forces into ANA, Afghan National Army, and also police. And the public did not really believe and trust to the Afghan army. They said they will not be able to manage any terroristic attack or any threat coming from the Taliban. But that experience showed and gave sort of confidence to the people and to the public that the military can and are able to manage some or such terroristic attacks, because within hours they were able to manage a very deadly attack from different areas in different parts of Kabul city, which is the center, the capital of Afghanistan. And I'm sure you have read, I'm sure there have been so many articles published, and I wonder if you've gone to some of them in New York Times or Daily Mail, Sun, the idea of how the reaction came from the West. But the problem is, the army, when they fight, who are they fighting for? A couple of days later, President Karzai announced, as he often says, yes, you are Taliban or my brother. I am criticized with it, but I will not stop calling them brother. So how could you as an army, when you do not have political back and pushing from behind, how could you get encouraged to go and fight for something which is not valued politically, if it is even publicly believed? If you have studied the history of Afghanistan in the 1980s, the Soviet Union collapse was not mainly due to the fact that it was military reasons or Mujahideen came because they were so powerful. No, it was basically because the party within itself collapsed. And of course, there was some economic aspect to it as well, like the AIDS shrunk. And so if I keep talking about the political aspect of it, it's going to be so long and long. So saying that, I just would like to talk a bit about the economic aspect of it. I hope it's not boring. The economic aspect of it, Taliban, I believe that they are not fighting for ideology. They are fighting for economy. Many believe that their fight is mainly for ideology. But I would say no, that's not an ideological fight, that's an economic fight. That's a fight for a proxy war, that's a fight for others who are pushing it. The Taliban in a lower level could be fighting for ideology, but the leadership is not fighting for ideology. They're fighting to access I'm running out of time? Okay. They're fighting to achieve the Caspian Sea oil. They have got I'm sure you've heard about the Unocal company, the Turkmenistan deal for the TAPI project, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India oil extension project. So all fight is for that, and so they have been supported by Pakistan for that. They have been supported by Saudi Arabia. They have been supported by, for some time, by United Arab Emirates. So, if you would like to know more about it,
right. Let's move on now, and we need to realize that in reconciliation, I always say there has to be 4 R's in order to get reconciliation. You need relief to give them something. You need relationships. You can only move forward if you spend time getting to know the other, even if they're bad. You need to take risks doing this. So relationships, relief, risk-taking, and then you can get reconciliation. Right, now we're going to open the floor so you can ask the question. Hello.
Hi. Oh, hi.
Will you say who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Bryony, and I've just come along to find out some more, really. It's an interesting topic. Sorry, you were just going to say, if you're interested to find out more, and then your sentence ended, and I am interested to find out more, so where can I find out more, please? And thank you to all of you for your contributions.
well, yes, I wanted to talk about a bit, but as I said, it's a very controversial topic, and you cannot likely be able to cover that big topic within 10 minutes of talks, and I did fail, and I can confess that. Yes, I say that their fight is not for ideology, their fight is for economy, and I said some of the examples that the Unicol project, the Caspian Sea oil, the TAPI project, TAPI, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India pipeline extension. And even during 1990s, Taliban had big source of finance from these 3 countries that I named. They had their own taxation system. They had owned their financing mechanism, aid, supports, taxing. So all those economic aspects that they had. That's why they were financially very strong, and that was one reason that the Northern Alliance was not able to. Do
you have any organization you can recommend to make contact with?
Not really. So let me finish the point. So, and for that reason, why I say it's not a fight for ideology, because if you go and study in Islam, what the acts that Taliban do, particularly recent acts, very horrific, that is not the real picture of real Islam. That is, they are instrumentalizing religion to ensure their own interest, or the interest of those for whom they work. So I can talk later on about what those are, those theological things.
I'm Alison Warner, and I'm interested in you're talking about women in Afghanistan. Zainab, what's the percentage of girl children who aren't getting any education?
Thank you very much. A good question. I don't have a precise number, to be honest, even if I've read a precise number, which I should have. I can look into that, of the number of girls not into education. But I have to say that they are the majority. They are the majority, even if we look age-wise. So let's say if there's majority of the youth, let's say, unemployed, probably we have got even higher number than that of girls being not in education. And then again, it depends from province to province, city to city. For instance, probably in the main cities such as Mazar Sharif, which is in the north, Kabul Central, Herat, which is encouraging girls in the city to go to schools and educate themselves. But in rural areas, in Herat itself, they're having difficulties to leave their homes and go and learn something, achieve something. Yes, same thing with any province.
Yeah, we have a huge problem. Even those who get to university cannot find jobs afterwards. And the whole thing of marriage and the way marriage is organized is a form of abuse.
And also, just can I add something to Zainab's answer with respect to the statistics about the number of girls going to school? Ministry of Education statistics reveals that there are 8 million children going to school after the fall of the Taliban at the moment. Out of this 8 million children, 3 million is constituted by the girls going to school. So it's basically the primary schools. And if you talk about the higher education, I cannot give you an exact number, but it's around 150,000 people going to higher education studies within 60 to 90 higher education institutes or universities.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for a very, very interesting topic. And I only want to express my admiration to Andrew White for all the good work that he does in Baghdad. I wonder whether the third speaker would agree that the 4 hours would work with Taliban, and to what extent. And am I, going on? The other question is, from your experience, has the intervention by the Western powers made any change to the outlook of the country? And has it been positive? And do you think that it will have a positive effect for the future of your country?
Yeah, regarding I only remember 3 R's of Andrew release relationship. What was the 4th?
Sorry?
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation. I think I did talk about reconciliation. About the
risk-taking.
Reconciliation.
Some part of the question goes to Zainab. Release. When you talk about release, yeah. We have the experience of Taliban in 1990s, and I lived where they were dominating. So I can feel the way, the horror they have created in there, not only for the boys or for people, but particularly for the girls. Girls were not allowed to educate. Some people who are, let's not say some people, let's say some who are supporting them, they say that during the time of the Taliban, we had very strong security. Security was held. Nobody was able to rob things, steal things, or do something wrong. I would say yes. But do you call that security when you are not mentally released? So that release never ever existed during the rule of the Taliban. And if you go and survey the public people, none of them would say to go back to those to those histories, relationship. There is no values or there is no common things that people and the Taliban would share. Afghanistan before 1990s reached to a level, but actually up to 1978, to be honest, Afghanistan really, in the region, it was comparable. But after the revolution, so it got worse and worse and worse. And the bad history comes from the fact when Taliban came to rule the country. And they really brought a very dark days to the history of Afghanistan. And they even gave a very, sometimes I shame to call myself Afghans when I talk about Taliban, because they really gave a very, very, very bad picture, very bad image of not only Islam, but also Afghans. So that relationship never existed. If it existed, it was just so-called. It was not, in fact, there was a fair and threat. Yeah, risk definitely applies. So no, everybody is concerned in post-2014 if troops leave Afghanistan. So what is going to happen to their future? What is going to, not only socially, not only culturally, but also politically and economically. I worked at the Central Bank of Afghanistan for 7 years, from 2002 up to 2009. And I remember when Taliban were ruling, I understood from the statistics at the Central Bank that there was no interest allowed. Interest rate, which is the basis of banking in any country, even in Islamic countries, that's a different argument. You may argue that interest is a haram or halal, that's a different discussion. But they really stopped many opportunities of employment for the people during their time. So how could you, not only employment opportunities, so there was, every time they were coming to, I remember personally, they were coming to the people's houses, knocking them and say, okay, you've got a weapon, give me your weapon. I got no weapon. He said, no, you got a weapon. And that way, they took lives or whatever they wanted. I'm sure you've heard about cutting nose, cutting hands, which has got no room in Islam, in real Islam. And
I wonder if all three speakers could perhaps reflect on the second question, which is how have the West's interventions had an impact?
Could I shortly say something on that?
Okay, go ahead.
Just on positive. Positively, if, let's say, when first Dr. Najib left and the Russian left Afghanistan, and that was with the aid and support of the US then, had they been consistent, had they kept their support then and not deserted Afghanistan the way it was, and they had kept that relationship with Afghanistan, Taliban would not have even came out. We would not even have spoken about them today. And even now, that is the Taliban issue. For instance, okay, the US or UK or the entire world does not recognize Taliban, but countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Pakistan, they are recognizing Taliban, and that is okay. And that's okay for the world to know that here. And even there was discussion of Taliban having an office in Qatar, and that was not even raised as an. I don't think if it was such a massive issue, it was a news. But I don't think if I didn't see much reaction from the internationally from the news and media. And to me, it sounded like okay, maybe that is okay to them. Well, US have got good relationship with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and at least from that side, they should not have been. This discussion should not even have brought forward.
Absolutely.
Negatively. Whatever is happening so far is all negative, again, because it was not consistent. Had the support been consistent, then we would not have spoken anything negative today, and we would not have seen anything negative in Afghanistan.
This is so important because that is one thing we have totally in common. There hasn't been the consistency. They did things and they left. And it's one of the things I've said to the American ambassador and American mission regularly. You know, the one good thing about the British, at least we know if you move into a country, you stay there for a while. But no, the Americans think you can leave. How long did we stay in India for? Over 100 years? 200 years? And on one side, that's negative. But it's also really negative when they leave you and say, oh, we've brought you democracy, as if democracy has dropped out of the sky. Democracy doesn't come overnight. It takes years and years. We are nowhere near democracy in Iraq. We have got total bigotry organized by those who are supposed to bring in democracy. And when it's elected, it's basically anarchy. And that is what we have, anarchy. The strictest, strongest, most powerful people win.
Yeah. And just to add what my friend said, in regard to the change, I feel a bit differently because, there have been some relative progress made, and I would not like to go into each of them. Like, there has been progress and relative democracy, parliament was created, legislation system was built up, banking system, which slept for over seven decades, became functional. Central banking and commercial banking activities was split. So there have been a lot on some infrastructure was also developed, education was developed. But the big concern that I have, and that's what I'm going to find during my PhD studies, is that AIDS in Afghanistan created the culture of dependence. And that culture of dependence, unfortunately, is not because of the AIDS we received in the last 10 years. Those aids, which are basically because of the interest of donors who have done it because of their own interest, unfortunately, I don't know whether they've reached their objectives or not, that's their objectives, but for us, we have been a victim, not only in the last 10 years. In 1747, when Afghanistan was ruled by Ahmad Shah Durrani, so Afghanistan remained an aid-dependent country for over 200 and almost 250 years. And as Andrew said, it's not easy to change overnight or over 10 years. State building in Europe took hundreds of years. Charlie Tilley has got good argument about that. War makes state, state makes war. So that's not easy. So it's unlikely to expect any changes from these aids and donations in the near future.
Perhaps have time for 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll continue the discussions informally.
What happens to Christians and other religious minorities in Afghanistan? Because I've heard President, what's the name of the president? Karzai. Yeah, he still upholds the laws of, is it apostasy? Apostasy. Yeah, apostasy.
So could you repeat that question?
What happens to religious minorities? It was the question, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Do you want me to cover that?
Yes, please.
I think Afghanistan is among if you go and make a survey of Islamic countries, in terms of the perception of belief in Islam, you will find Afghanistan number 1. 99 point something in Afghanistan believe in Islam. So you would not find any countries with that statistics who believe in Islam. Even in Saudi Arabia, which is the initiator of Islam, who brought Islam to the world, you would not find that rate. So as far as minority is concerned, which in Afghanistan is divided into two sects of 2 branches of Islam, which is Sunni and Shia. But Sunni, Afghanistan is a highly dominated country by Sunnis, and apart from the ethnic issues, because Sunnis are divided across the country in the south, in the west, in the east. So in most parts of the country, I cannot tell you the exact statistics of how. I think it's around 9% or 10%. I'm not sure if Zainab can help me with that, because it's very minor. And
23, I think.
Something like that. But what is going to happen to them? I don't know if you followed the news. Just that is another concern. A few days ago, just last week, the Ashura Day, which is the date of death of Ashura's Day, was celebrated. Hussein's death. Yeah, Hussein's death was celebrated, and that's really unfortunate.
Not celebrated, commemorated. See, I'm more Shia than here. You don't celebrate somebody being killed.
But we use the word celebrate, and condolence offering condolences, and the Shias were just hitting themselves, something like that, and Sunnis did not like it, and unfortunately, it did not happen on the street. It happened in the university. As a result of these clashes, the university was off for 3 months now. So who suffers? The people suffer. So I don't see the future of minorities, religious minority in Afghanistan, very bright, at least in the next 10 years. So that is a big concern.
2 more
the
quick
Christians
questions.
in Iraq, there used to be 1.5 million Christians. Now we only have 200,000 Christians. It's very important that I can say categorically the government has done everything to support the Christians. The Islamic leaders I'm friends with and work with have only encouraged the Christians. They have been with us all the way. There's only one thing we can't do, which is really difficult, and that's convert.
I'd like to take issue with you about wanting the soldiers from America or whichever part of the world who went there.
I can't hear a word you're saying.
I can't hear either.
I said I'd like to take issue with you about the soldiers remaining there to see through to peace times. But those soldiers are the people's, the sons and daughters of, people in the Western world. You cannot there has to be a dialogue. They need to talk to the enemies if that's what would, take them to another level. You cannot just say to, shoot them in the head or do whatever you could. They have to talk. The IRAs did talk to the British, and who would have thought Ian Paisley and that Adams chap would sit round the table and discuss the way forward for peace.
Okay. Is that the question addressing to me, I assume? Yeah.
So I think the lady is challenging Canon White's assertion that you should stick around longer as a soldier.
I couldn't hear a word of it.
Okay.
You'll have to come and tell me. I'm very deaf.
The question was, I think you mentioned it was not so good when the American army stays a very short time and then leaves. This lady is saying you need to stay and talk rather than stay and fight.
I need to say what?
Stay and talk for reconciliation rather than staying to fight.
No, but the thing was that the American army, the DOD, the Pentagon, they supported us completely in the reconciliation process. I'm afraid to say it because he didn't have a very good reputation in the past week, but General Petraeus was totally with us. It was not fighting, it was talking. And it was aiding talking. Fighting does not work. Fighting is not the way. Sitting down, becoming friends is the way, is the only way. And there is a lot of healing to take place after the American soldiers had been into Iraq. But a lot of healing did take place. And then they left us. And when they left, the violence radically increased. You don't see it on the news anymore because most of the journalists run away. Or they've been killed. But it's really difficult. We really needed to make friends with people again. And that's what we never did. They left us.
Can I just add just a couple of issues on what Andrew has said? Yeah, making friendship depends on two things. You should either share values or you should share threats. If those two things are not with you, so you are unlikely to make that friendship. And as far as this concerns with Taliban, so I personally don't see any common things that we share with them. Neither we share any threats. For them, some countries may not be a threat, but for us it may. So it's very much important.
I would say that your experience with the Taliban is the same as our experience with Al-Qaeda Iraq. They are not interested in reconciliation. They are not interested in talking. There is nothing you can do with them.
Yeah, so what can you do?
They just want to kill you. Full stop.
I think it's time for us to draw to a close there, but we won't stop. We'll carry on talking rather than killing one another. And I can't offer you many risks, but I can offer you some relief and some relationship building over some fair trade drinks at the back. So let me, on your behalf, thank our panel very much indeed for their erudition and their wide-ranging discussion, and thank you all for coming.
I've got lots of